me where that last Dragon Ball is!
My magic finger says it's somewhere in the ceiling!
The Dragon Ball legacy is something many of us are deeply ingrained in. And in terms of Dragon Ball games, we played classics like Legacy of Goku 1 and 2, Budokai Tenkaichi, and more recently games like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, Xenoverse, and hell, even the old school peeps like myself for Dragon Ball Z Hyper Dimension, if you remember that one. So you can expect that a lot of us were very interested back in 2021 when the announcement trailer for Dragon Ball The Breakers came out. It was a new asymmetrical survival game set in the Dragon Ball universe, and it was going to take place online. Now, I remember back when I first saw this trailer, I did think the gameplay looked kinda goofy, but as gullible as I am, I still had a lot of hope. Hope for an amazing game that would be fun and entertaining, and also bringing something new to the typical Dragon Ball games that we've been used to. But then, the game came out on October 14th, 2022, and it was okay, to say the least. It was a game that had great ambition, but failed to deliver what many fans were hoping for. And The Breakers was definitely in need of a revamp, but sadly, after many failed updates and what seemed to be a degradation of quality after every single update, The Breakers now has simply just become a former shell of what it used to be. Let me tell you guys some of the issues that I and other players have deemed the biggest issues of what caused this downfall. From this screenshot that I took on January 14th, 2024, we can see that the numbers are laughably low for how many people are actually on during this time. Now, mind you, this is strictly coming from Steam, so this isn't accurate from like a console perspective, but as far as PC, this is as accurate as it'll get. You can see the slight jumps when a new season drops, but not nearly enough to keep this live service game afloat. This might not mean much to the average person, but if you are a player in The Breakers, then you're affected with empty lobbies, long wait times, and simply bad gaming experience for everybody involved. I mean, let's just take a look at some of these recent Steam reviews to see what people think. The first one we have here is from Monocle Gentlesir, and it reads, "O form of balance, O form of decent updates, and O form of rewards/ways to summon without grinding for days. Game is pay to win." Next up here we have one from Egregious. "Try again when crossplay or good matchmaking is added. It's a shame because the game is honestly an uncut gem with loads of fun beneath jank. But 9 out of 10 of my Raider matches go up against players with level 100 minimum, often teams with multiple level 250s. As a brand new Raider with not a single cap skill, it makes no sense for me to be matched against these players, but here we are. As I understand that it's just because the community on PC is so small that all the elite players just play together and stomp all the new players, thereby keeping the community small. Hopefully crossplay in Season 5 makes things better, because the game is dead if nothing changes. Part of the problem is also gacha. You add pay-to-win mechanics on top of absurd mismatchings, and you have a recipe to ruin an otherwise hilariously good time. Devs shooting themselves in the foot with a rocket launcher. Also, cheaters who have apparently been around since Season 1. One dude just sat in an invisible bubble working on STM, which is a super time machine, and the bubble never ran out. Fun! Report function does nothing. If you block all the whales and cheaters, the game is good and you can get match made with decent players. The player base is small enough that it's not too hard to block all the regular whales who are running around with maxed out rare perks, but dips need to pull their finger out for Season 5 so newbies can have a better experience. And last but not least, from Protege, a gacha game you have to pay for. Screw matchmaking. Extremely unbalanced for low-level raiders who stand zero chance against a survivor team who coordinates, because you can't fill your evolution as quickly when you have one only played once as a raider, and can't level any of your skills, whereas survivors can play constantly to level themselves up. It would be better if they allowed more global matchmaking and fixed their servers so they didn't have to disable the one and only method of you grinding to get your raiders and then making you gamble for other stuff. Which takes me to our next segment. So it seems that as far back as 2 months ago, and hell, maybe even longer than that, Bandai has been aware of the issues that matchmaking has and the server issues. Fundamentally, for an enjoyable gaming experience, you need to separate people who play this game a lot or are more experienced and people who are beginners and lack that experience. But as you can see, we're teamed up with a lot of people who are in the Z rank, which means they're in the top of their league, rightfully so though. The ranks aren't necessarily that hard to hit, honestly, they just take a little bit of time. But the point that I'm trying to make or get to is that you play with people in different skill gaps, and that is where you get the broken matchmaking. On the other hand, we also have to expect this from a game with literally just 300 people on it only. Since the inception of the Breakers, we have been introduced to Gacha Mechanics, meaning that the Breakers has collectible characters, skills, or abilities, many of them which are only obtainable through a Gacha mechanic, wherein the player exchanges in-game currency for pools, each pool yielding a random collectible drop. The pools are equivalent to spins on a slot machine or roulette wheel, which I don't have to explain to you how annoying that can be for a game that should have been free from the start. Why this sucks after putting it into practice is that you can only grind for so many hours to be able to save a huge amount of zenny, which is the currency, to do some rotations here and there, and multi-summon to get 10 copies of the same character, which is pretty crazy. That's what I have to say is the horrible practice of the gacha system in the Breakers, and another one of the main reasons that many people are leaving this game. I'll close this section off nicely with a comment that I found from somebody on Reddit. From Fat Nutsack 33, you still here crying though? Breakers living rent free in your head. This has nothing to do with the segment, I just thought it was funny as hell. Some of us don't mind the repetitiveness of gameplay in some games because they're fun. Now, if a mechanic in a game is not fun to begin with, or feels very repetitive, then that's where you start to feel that the game is just boring and shallow. Here lies Dragon Ball Breakers, a game with already not very fun mechanics and very clunky gameplay that in the grander scheme of things falls flat. The camera not doing what a camera is supposed to do, the lack of real feedback when it's needed in the game. The game just doesn't make you feel like you're in a Dragon Ball universe. Rather, it makes you feel like you're just in a bad game of hide and seek where the seeker has all the equipment needed to find you and you have a rock. All right, don't heart me in the comments, okay? This sounded a lot better in my head, and it was kind of funny in my head when I said it. Listening back to this after editing, it doesn't hit as good as I thought it would. So I apologize for that. What I probably should have said was like, hey, all you got is like Vegeta gloves or a rocket launcher, which in theory doesn't sound as poor as a rock, but whatever. And lastly, we have here a prevalent concern raised by the player community that revolves the lack of meaningful content updates in Dragon Ball The Breakers. Players express dissatisfaction with the sparse additions to the games, but not only that, the horrible decisions they decided to implement when they removed the Raider queue from the game, and now they do it based on priority. Like, how are you going to do that with a player base that is already the lowest it's ever been and just keeps getting lower and lower every single day? Reviews consistently emphasize the importance of regular content updates for live service games, but Dragon Ball The Breakers says, nah, we don't need to, we just gave you all the 1-year anniversary, what more do you guys want? The absence of these real updates seem to have led to a stagnation in the game's content, leaving players wanting more, but being disappointed when they add things like Oolong Photo Fest. The overall consensus suggests that the game has not lived up to the expectations as a live service title, failing to deliver on promises like crossplay, which they have allegedly say will come out sooner, but honestly it's a little too late for that, a whole year has passed, fixing region locks, and the Raider queue returning, but we can all agree that these things will come too late, especially when they're needed now the most. In the grand tapestry of Dragon Ball gaming history, Dragon Ball The Breakers stands out not as a triumph, but as a missed opportunity. The legacy of iconic titles like Legacy of Goku, Budokai Tenkaichi, and more recently Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and Xenoverse created high expectations for this new venture into the Dragon Ball universe. The announcement trailer in 2021 generated a lot of excitement and hype, but the reality of this game's release in October 2022 fell short of the anticipated greatness that it could have been. In conclusion, Dragon Ball The Breakers is not just a modern Dragon Ball game, it is a cautionary tale of unmet expectations, broken promises, and a game that has failed to live up to its legacy. The issues raised by the community, from low player counts to flawed mechanics and a lack of meaningful updates, paint a grim picture of a game that started with ambition, but ended in disappointment. The Breakers, once poised to break new grounds, found itself labeled as one of the worst modern Dragon Ball games, a title it may never escape.